Exciting day. Signing day is always an exciting day where we have an opportunity to strengthen our football team. We always talk about there's a couple ways to strengthen the team, and A is through addition, and that is what we're here to talk about. We talk about the development part of it all during the off season and the role that Kirk plays and these coaches play. But this is the recruiting part. This is December and January. You've got to believe that everything you do to win is about talent, and that's what this recruiting process was all about. And we started out, really a couple years ago, but really full speed on this class the day after signing day a year ago. A day after signing day, we sit down, we start watching film, we start talking about putting guys in order, who we really like athletically, who we feel can make it academically, and then really spend a year doing our research on who is going to fit into what we do from a social standpoint. And so I'm really excited about this class. When you look at the young men that are going to be part of it, really excited about this class. I think there are some great people, some really good students, but probably most importantly, I think there's some really good athletes in this class and some guys that are going to have an opportunity to make an immediate impact in our program and what we're doing. I'll talk a little bit about it this afternoon at the event at 4 o'clock, but we lost some pretty big names. I mean, when you look at the guys that just graduated last year and you look at names like Kenneth Dixon and Jeff Driscoll and Jens Danielson and Josh Robinson and Paul Turner, and on the defensive side of the ball, when you look at Vern Butler and Dora and Nick Thomason and Bo Feet and Kentrell Bryce and Bryson Abraham and Adarius Barnes. I mean, those are all names that have played here for 3 and 4 years that have to be replaced. And many of these guys that we're going to go over and many of these guys that we're going to talk about are guys that we definitely plan on coming in and making an immediate impact in our program. This program, I mean, in this signing class, it's probably about 85% high school players, and this year we did sign 4 junior college players to come in here to the program, but I really like the mix. I think some of the guys that we brought in here, there was probably a little bit heavier emphasis on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side with upperclassmen, but I do think that we brought a couple guys in here that have an opportunity to be involved right away and make a difference, as well as some of the high school players that are going to come in here. The junior college players starting offensively, I mean, you've got, I'll tell you what, I won't even do it that way. I'll just talk about some of the offensive players that are coming in here. You've got Josh Outlaw, who was the one upperclassman that is going to join us. Josh Outlaw comes from a junior college. He was the number 4 tackle in the country coming out of high school, very highly touted, very highly recruited. When you look at the additions that we made today with 5 offensive linemen, I think we have a chance to really have the strongest line since I've been here. And I think a couple of these additions today are definitely going to make a difference, not just with a starter and a guy like Josh Outlaw, who you bring in here to give you immediate impact in your 2 deep, but also in the 4 underclassmen. And there's 4 young men that have made a decision to join this program, and one being Drew Melanson, who was already here, who was a mid-year enrollee, who's got great size and athleticism to him, along with 3 young men that made that decision today, and that is Cody Russell, Taylor Fondell, and Kennedy Madison from Ouachita. All are going to join the program. When you look at those 3 high school players, those 4 high school players, along with the junior college, that is one of that and the D-line. The majority of this class was offensive and defensive linemen. When you look at, I believe, 10 of them, half of them were either offensive or defensive linemen, but I think that's really where we need to make some strength. I look at that class and I look at the size of the freshmen that are coming in here are going to be great pieces of clay that have size and strength and speed and athleticism. I think them having an opportunity to get into a mix of 2 deep is just going to be a matter of really getting into learn the playbook and getting into the system, and we'll find out where they are as they get here and we go along. The sole running back we took is Israel Tucker from Rummel. He had a great sophomore season, even junior season, got hurt this year as a senior a little bit, but still was a huge plug in what Rummel has been doing the last couple of years and the success that they've had in their runs right now for state championships. But I think Israel Tucker is is a solid back. He's got a low center of gravity. He's strong. He's well built, but I think he is a guy that just brings great character and an awful lot of talent to a position that really, when you look at it last year, losing the three guys that we did, well, really the four guys that we did when you count the two fullbacks, losing guys like Kenneth Dixon and Blake Martin, but also fullbacks like Marlon Seats and Ricky Jones. I was going to call him Williams. Would have liked to have Ricky Williams too, but Ricky Jones, I mean, losing those four guys and then looking at it and saying, you're going to ask a guy like Bobby Holly, who came in a year ago as a fullback, to kind of fill some of that role, along with a guy like Israel Tucker to come in there as well. There's only really one tight end or wide receiver that's in the group that's true tight end receiver type, and that's Zach Kuzar out of Oxford, Mississippi. I think is probably a lot like a Connor Smith, a big player who I think has a chance to really grow and develop, but he's got really good hands and ball skills. But there are two athletes that we signed that I think, and they're listed as athletes because they can play on either side of the ball. You've got guys like David Beasley and L'Jarius Sneed that I think are difference makers with the ball under their arm, can make an awful lot of things happen, are athletic, but yet they also can play on the defensive side of the ball and could step in there. But they're two guys that really are going to give us great balance because they're going to get on the field wherever there's a need. And I think those two guys are phenomenal athletes. Like I said, both of them have crazy catch-to-touchdown ratios, and punt returners, kick returners, you put the ball under their arm, they can make an awful lot of things happen. There's two quarterbacks that will be joining us in the fall. One is Jack Abraham, the quarterback that's going to be here at mid-year from Oxford, who was the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Mississippi, that I think is a very talented player that's going to have the opportunity to come in here and compete in the spring. And the other young man that has made a decision to attend Louisiana Tech is John Randall Belton. John Randall Belton from West Monroe is a very talented player. He's got great size. He's got great physical attributes. He's just really kind of had an injury bug and a lot of hard luck through his high school days with a couple injuries to his knee and to his legs. I mean, really in all 3 years. But I think he's a guy that he comes in here as he gets healthy. I think he's got a guy that really has a chance to make an impact at that position as we go down the road, forward, as he really has a chance to rehab and get healthy. On the defensive side of the ball, D-line, I think Rick Petrie and the defensive line are excited about the take that we have, or the young men that are coming in to represent this program on the defensive line. I think there's some difference makers in that class. I think there's some great players. I think when you look at it, there are, 2 junior college and 3 high school players. But I'll go back and I'll say that I look at 2 of these high school players right now, and I look at Kadarian Mason and I look at Willie Baker. When you look at their size, athleticism, their length, I think Kadarian was listed at 6'4", 250, and he walks in the door and he's 6'6", 290. I think with him and Willie Baker, both of those guys are young guys that have a chance physically to come in and make immediate impacts. I really like Eric Kenzer out of Houston, who I think is a very talented player. We had him in camp. He's one of those guys at about 240 pounds right now that's going to grow and mature into the position that I think has a chance to be a really solid player for us. And then the other 2 in there are Kalen Ritchie, a junior college defensive end, and Keontae Gardner. Both of those coming in as upperclassmen or junior college players. But they all get me excited. I think all 5 of them are going to be special players here. And when you look at it and say you play 4 of them at that position on the defensive line, I think there's an awful lot of beef in that group. And when you look at guys like Jalen Ferguson and Deldrick Canty, those are guys that are going to need some help. And I think with these guys coming in, many of them are going to have an opportunity to plug right into the 2 deep and even push for some playing time. But I think we definitely helped ourselves walking into this season with what we did right now on the defensive line. So excited about that. There's only 1 linebacker in the group. When you look at all the young guys we've signed over the last 2 years, and that's Devin Hamilton, who I think is a very talented player from down in the southern part, who is a very athletic young man. who is really, I think, going to really grow and flourish into that position. And then there are two defensive backs. When you look at Reggie Cleveland, who would be considered probably really a bigger, hard-hitting player, much like Kentrell Bryce that just walked out the door. Comes from a very successful program in Scotland, and I think is a really talented player. And then Zach Hannibal, I think really has cover corner skills. And Zach Hannibal coming in here right now, I think has got an opportunity to come in here. We signed a lot of freshmen a year ago. When you start talking about Trey Spencer and some of the young guys that are there, Ephraim Kitchen, Theron Williams, Aaron Robertson, but I definitely think Zach Hannibal belongs in that class and is going to come in and have an opportunity to compete for time in the two deep. So really excited about this class, really excited about the group of young men that have decided to join this program. And now that this day is over and coaches can put their head on their pillow and sleep a little bit more soundly without having to worry about some of the surprises really coming or going. But right now I'm just really excited about this class and this group of young men. As I said before, it's not just their athleticism, but it's the type of young men they are and it's the type of students they are. We've made a huge issue the last couple years about the number of young men that we have signed that have gotten here on our campus. That's really important to what we're doing. This is not about making a splash in February. This is about having the opportunity to make a splash in August when everybody gets here and we have an opportunity to get on the field and start to put the 2016 football team together again when everybody gets here in August. So really excited about it and would love to answer any questions that anybody may have. Well, and we had a lot of guys committed early. I think it's a real tribute to this staff, this coaching staff, for the job they do recruiting. I cannot thank the high school coaches enough in this state. They have been phenomenal to work with. We have made an emphasis, again, for I believe this is the fourth year in a row, the majority of our players have come from the state of Louisiana. I don't have that sheet with numbers, but what was it, 8, 9, 10? 10 of these players joining the program are from the state of Louisiana, so half of these young men are from the state of Louisiana. I think what happened this year, we had a lot of young men commit early, and then we lost a couple of them. A couple of young men changed on us, and probably starting at about the beginning of December when all the coaches could go out and start going into the high school and seeing a lot of these players face to face. There's some other schools that came in on some of the guys that were committed. And so really what it forced us to do is to go back and kind of refill the class. You know what I mean? It's almost like we were almost done. We lost a couple, but then the ones that we were able to go out and fill it with, I think are really quality players. I don't think we settled. I don't think we dropped. I think one of the lessons that we learned a couple years ago is that, recruiting's not over until signing date. And so just because a young man commits, in the past what we would do is we would tell everybody else we're done recruiting. We can't take any more, and we would kind of let them all go because we had a verbal commitment. And then the night before signing day, he would change his mind and go somewhere else, and you wouldn't sign a player in that position. So one of the things that we continued to do this year is when we had a signee, when we had a commitment, we continued to recruit some of the other players at that position just in case we were to lose them, that we would be able to fill them in with some of these other really high-quality players, and that's what we were able to do, and that's where you see a lot of the young men that made a decision here in the month of January were guys that were added because the spaces that were made available because of some young men changing their minds. That big size-wise or number-wise? I mean, when you look at the talent in that class, like I said, I can't say enough positive things about Rick Petrie, Blake Baker, the job that this staff did recruiting. And like I said, when you start talking about the talent of guys like Willie Baker and Kadarian, and you look at B.J. Mason, I mean, I think there is an awful lot of talent in this class. And I think those two defensive ends as high school players had opportunities to go to a lot of different schools, a lot of quote Power 5 schools. And I applaud them for sticking with their decision and having the maturity and the confidence to make the decision that they felt was best for them. But I think those two guys are difference makers. You know, we added some upperclassmen because that position for us right now is so light. When you look at it in the last 3 years, we've got 5 defensive linemen that are playing or have the opportunity to play in the NFL. When you start talking about IK Poly, Justin Ellis, Houston Bates, and then this year with Vernon Butler and Vontarius Dora, you're talking about 5 defensive linemen you're losing off your roster that are going into not only those 5, but you also lost guys like Taylor and Michael Schrang and some guys that played a really solid role for you. So I thought as much as we've had as much as graduation and some of those guys have left, this was one of the primary emphasis of this class. And I thought the staff did a really nice job, and I'm really proud of these young men that made the decision to be here, but also having the opportunity to add a couple upperclassmen. So what you don't want to do is take 5 guys in one class, you know what I mean, as freshmen. And that's why we wanted to be able to break it up where we went 3 and 2. And I feel really good about the balance and the mix that we have right now on defensive line. But I think there's some of these guys that are going to make an immediate impact on this football team and have their presence felt in 2016. Yeah, I mean, we've got to get our offensive lineman numbers up. We have not, I'd like to carry 17. We have not. Last year we carried 14. I would like to carry 17 offensive linemen, but again, it's where you add them. You don't want them all in your freshman class. You want to try and spread them out a little bit, and that's why I bring it in a Josh Outlaw, who was a junior, and that right now we don't have a junior right now on our roster that plays on the offensive line. And that's why we felt like we needed an upperclassman to give us another guy in that class. We do lose some very talented seniors next year. And we've tried to answer that need with what we signed last year. When you look at guys like O'Shea Dugas, Ethan Reed, some of those guys inside that we've been taking the last couple of years, McCready, are 3 guys we took a year ago. And then when you look this year and you start adding Drew Malonsong, Cody Russell, and Taylor Fondell, there's 3 more. So you got 6 guys in the inside that you're going to have the opportunity to maybe make backups or thirds, get some reps, get them ready, so when those guys walk out the door, you don't have to go hit the junior colleges in a wholesale scramble to try and fill your offensive line. And that's what we talk about in building a program and why it's so important to bring these high school players in, give them to our strength coach, to Coach Hester, for the next year, for the next 2 years, let them continue to develop, grow, fill out. But I think, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but I think a guy like Ethan Reed up front, who redshirted last year, is going to be in our 2-deep mix this year. I think he's got a chance to be a heck of a player. And then you take these 3 guys and bring them in. If they're not ready right now, you redshirt them, let them grow and develop for a year. And hopefully when we lose all 3 of those upperclassmen, inside players, that you'll have the ability to just step these next 6 guys in and fill them that we've signed the last 2 years. When you get down, you've got some of these young men that are solid commitments that have made their decision. And then you've got the last week of recruiting, and you got some that are still up in the air. And we felt like in order to really make a difference that we had to let Kadarian know how important he was going to be to our recruiting class. And so as we went out and did our visits, and I only get 1 home visit off campus and had not yet visited Kadarian. So we took a couple people in there with us. We took the entire staff in for that home visit. I thought it was a great home visit. We had an opportunity with not only him but his mother, Bam, had an opportunity to meet everybody and all the coaches because she did not come on the official visit when Kadarian came on the visit, and I wanted her to feel comfortable with this decision if that was his choice. And so I thought we had a great home visit. A big part of recruiting is building relationships, and that's why I applaud this staff, and I can't thank them enough for the job that they do for Louisiana Tech University. And the way that we're building this thing is with people, and I think they have made a huge difference in the recruiting process and building relationships and getting these young men to feel comfortable with how we're trying to build things here. And so I am can't say enough positive things about them, and just that visit overall I thought went very well, and obviously comfortable enough for Kadarian to make his decision today and decide that he was going to be a Bulldog. I think all of a sudden when you look at some of these guys that we're talking about, they had other offers. They had other offers. They had some SEC offers, Big 12 offers, Big 10 offers, and made the decision to stay here. To stay here and come to Louisiana Tech. As we have talked about, the thing about when you're picking a school, you want to find a place that you can graduate. Which we have done very successfully, especially over the last couple of years with a team GPA right now of over 2.75, which is one of the highest we've had here. To say that I want to go be part of a family and get them on this campus and be around those players, to see the commitment to excellence with a building like the Davison Athletics Complex, and then to get on the field and have success. Not only success in wins and bowl games and those experiences, but success that, that I have an opportunity to achieve my goal to get to the NFL from here. And when you look at a guy like Kenneth Dixon that came here and started every game, when you look at a guy like Vernon Butler that started every game, when you look at a guy, when you look at some of the transfers that we've had in Houston Bates and Cody Sokol and then Jeff Driscoll that have transferred here and had great success on the field, and then they turn on the Senior Bowl and there's 3 players wearing that Louisiana Tech brand on their helmet. You know what? I think all that helps. I think the building helps. I think the success on the field helps. I think the success on the classroom helps. And that's what we've talked about, building a program and not just building a season. But I think it's all starting to make a difference, and you're starting to see the snowball get bigger and bigger and bigger as hopefully we can keep it rolling down the hill and keep this thing growing. It's a huge boost. And like I said, it's a real testament. Joe Sloan, who I think is just a tenacious recruiter, is one of those guys that doesn't go away. He is relentless in his pursuit. And I think he built great relationships with Willie and with that family. I think he's very trustworthy. We've said before, we're not trying to sell an empty bill of goods here. Our job is to educate these young men on Louisiana Tech and what Louisiana Tech can do for them and the way that they fit into our system. And I think Joe Sloan is a people person, and he's done a great job. Not just Joe, but the entire staff. I think when you say, wow, you got a guy like Rick Petrie and his experience and the number of guys that he's had success with, and I look at Vernon Butler and I look at Vontarius Dora and the success they have had in those 5 D linemen that are going on to play in the NFL from Louisiana Tech, and it's close to home, and I have an opportunity to stay close to home, graduate the quarter system. I just think that the staff has done a great job of letting these young men know all the positive things that are going on here. So I don't look at stars, I don't look at, he's got 4, recruit him. But obviously he's one of the marquee names and one of the marquee players in this class because he was so highly publicized and was recruited by so many different people. And there's a lot of people that tried to come in on him, and he said, no, I'm good. I'm good with my decision. And when you look at his size, his length, his athleticism, and what he can do, I think he has a chance to be a real difference maker. But love Willie, his family. Home visit was one of my favorites. Just getting to know that family. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of closeness in that family, and I think that was a big part of his decision to stay close to home, much like an Xavier Woods from Monroe who came over here and had opportunities to go other places and started every game since he's been here and led the country in interceptions a year ago, and had the success on the field and what he's doing with a 3.8 GPA. I think all those are things that we're not asking young men to come here and pave a path that's never been done. We're asking them to come here and be part of this program and grow and develop as a student, as a person, and as a player. we talked about how important the state is to us, and I've got Tim Rattay recruits the Monroe area, and when you look on our roster and start looking at the number of players that are from the Monroe area, I mean, there's a lot of players from southern Arkansas, Monroe, heading over into Mississippi that Tim's recruited. Tim has the luxury of being able to sit down in a home and say, I'm not just telling you about this, I lived it. You know what I mean? I went to school here, and this is what I was able to do with my degree and what I was able to do with my experiences and the friendships that I made and getting on the field and having the success and having an 8-year NFL career. He has the ability to sit down and explain it, and he's living proof on the success that you can have in coming to Louisiana Tech. And I think he's done a great job of recruiting that area. It gives the young men that are there an option to stay close to home and have the opportunity to play big-time college football. Yes. With both of them. And I will say we can all speculate, but who knows where John Randall's story would have gone had he been able to stay healthy through high school. I go back to having the opportunity to watch him play in a game when he was a sophomore, and wow. I mean, took off down the field, went right down the field, ran by everybody. Phenomenal athlete, and then you meet him and he walks in the door and he's a 6'2", 6'3", 220-pound athlete, and you think, holy smokes. I mean, who's to say what his high school career could have been had he been able to stay healthy? So, yes, I definitely think he's got a huge upside, maybe for somebody that his high school career didn't quite pan out the way that he would have scripted it. But as we talk about all the time, things happen for a reason, and we're certainly excited that he's made the decision to be part of this program and to join us. And I think it's going to create a lot of excitement as he gets here and has the opportunity to get on the field. And I know Coach Rattay is really excited to have the opportunity to work with him. When you look at Zach Hannibal is an athlete. And even though he may be a little bit raw as a corner, he's got phenomenal cover skills. He's a young man that has all the intangibles, looks you in the eye. He's got a work ethic. He's got determination. He's got character. I just think he's got a lot of values that are really going in his direction, that as he comes to college, he has a chance to really flourish and shine. And as you said, with only 2 years of high school experience, the more he gets with a Kevin Curtis and continues to develop from a fundamental standpoint in the secondary, I think he's only going to get better and better, and I think his future's ahead of him. Yes, we're not done. I mean, this is the beginning of a group of young men that have made the decision, and this is the first day of signing day. But you just talked about last year after signing date. Bobby Holly ended up here from Farmerville, who's going to be a major part of what we do right now as a fullback, losing those 2 seniors. We signed a couple transfers. When you talk about Alfred Smith, who was offered by a lot of people coming out of high school and was going to go to Arizona State, and then ended up at Utah, and then was like, what am I doing? I want to go back home. I want to be close to home. And to watch what he did as a redshirt this year on the scout team, I think everybody's excited about the impact that he can make coming in here. And then you've got a Jarrell Jackson that transferred in here. When you start to look at his size and athleticism and ability, what he's got an opportunity to do and a chance to do. So I think there was definitely some transfers. Who am I leaving out? There's one more. Ronald Lewis. Ronald Lewis, who transferred in here, Ronald has a chance to come in here, and after sitting last year, the difference between taking a quote junior college player, maybe a transfer that has to sit a year, they come in, they get acclimated academically, they take that redshirt year, they get acclimated athletically, they learn your system, and then all of a sudden when it's their turn to get on the field, which is what it is for a Ronald Lewis, I think he has a chance to all of a sudden he could find himself in a starting role at the end of spring. And so when you start talking about those 4 that all came after signing date a year ago, I mean, all 4 of those guys can make an impact on this football team. And right now with where we are, we're not done. We still do have some scholarships available, and we're certainly not done with our additional part of this. And when you look at over the last couple years, we have had some transfers come in here and make some immediate impacts. I think we have some flexibility when you start talking about guys like L'Jarius Sneed and David Beasley that have the opportunity to play both sides of the ball. I think it's probably more what's going to become available. You don't recruit transfers, you know what I mean? You don't go out and say, oh, we want that, and we want that, and we want that. You kind of got to sit and wait to see who's going to make a decision to leave their program and whether or not you have a niche that they may fit into for your program. So right now, I mean, I wouldn't rule out any position. You really want the best players available. If a young man, all of a sudden if a young man becomes on the transfer and is looking for a program to go.